Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. My dear brothers and sisters, today I want to remind you of something powerful, something that can change the course of your life. Never give up. No matter how hard life gets, no matter how broken you feel, know that Allah sees you, hears you, and is with you. The struggle you're going through is not the end of your story, it is part of your journey towards something greater. Let's reflect on 5 key reminders that will help you keep going no matter what trials you face. Your struggle has a purpose. My dear brothers and sisters, sometimes the weight of life feels unbearable. You ask yourself, why am I going through this? Why is Allah testing me like this? But I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. Do you think anything happens in your life without reason? Do you think Allah al-Hakim, the Most Wise, would allow you to go through pain without purpose? Look at the stories of the prophets. Every single one of them faced struggles that seemed impossible to bear, yet those very struggles became the reason for their elevation. Think of Prophet Yusuf, thrown into a well by his own brothers, sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned for years. If anyone had a reason to ask, why me? It was him. But what did he do? He remained patient, steadfast, and faithful to Allah. And in the end, the well that should have been his downfall became the beginning of his rise. The prison that should have broken him became his gateway to leadership. Your hardship is not a punishment. It is not a sign that Allah has abandoned you. It is a sign that Allah is preparing you for something greater. He is strengthening your heart, purifying your soul, and drawing you closer to Him. Think of an olive. When does it produce the finest oil? When it is crushed. Think of gold. When does it become pure? When it is exposed to fire. And think of the believer. When does he become closest to his Lord? When he is tested. Allah tells us in the Quran, do people think they will be left to say, we believe, without being tested? Surah Al-Ankabut 29:02. Your struggles are not meaningless. They are your path to becoming the person Allah created you to be. They are the chisels carving away at the rough edges of your soul, shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and closer to your Creator. And sometimes the wisdom behind your hardship is hidden from you in the moment. You might not understand why you're going through it now, but one day you will look back and realize, subhanAllah, this was exactly what I needed. The job you lost, the heartbreak you endured, the plans that fell apart, every single moment was a step in the direction that Allah had written for you. So don't despair. Don't let your struggles make you bitter. Let them make you better. Let them push you closer to Allah. Because when you walk toward Him, He runs toward you. And when you trust in Him, He will never let you fall. Allah's mercy is greater than your mistakes. My dear brothers and sisters, one of the greatest tricks of Shaitan is to make you believe that you are beyond redemption, that your sins are too many, your past too dark, your mistakes too heavy for Allah to forgive. He whispers to you, you? After everything you've done, do you really think Allah will accept you? But I want you to hear me clearly. Allah's mercy is far greater than your sins. His forgiveness is far wider than your mistakes, and His door is always open. Think about this. If you were beyond hope, if your sins were truly unforgivable, then why does Allah call Himself Ar-Rahman, the Most Merciful? Why does He say in the Quran, say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Surah Zumar 39:53. Not some sins, not just small sins. There was a man who came to the Prophet feeling overwhelmed by the weight of his mistakes. He said, Ya Rasulallah, I have committed so many sins, is there still hope for me? The Prophet responded with something so powerful. He said, Allah's mercy is greater than all of your sins combined. Imagine that. No matter how far you have strayed, no matter how many times you have fallen, Allah's mercy is always greater, and He is not waiting to punish you. He is waiting for you to turn back to Him. Look at the man who killed 99 people. 99 lives taken. If anyone had lost hope, it would have been him. But when he finally turned to Allah, seeking forgiveness, Allah guided him to the path of mercy. And when he died on that path, Allah in His infinite mercy forgave him. So tell me, my dear brother, my dear sister, what have you done that is greater than the mercy of Allah? What mistake have you made that Allah cannot erase? You might feel distant from Him, but He is not distant from you. The moment you turn to Him, the moment you say Astaghfirullah sincerely, He wipes away your sins as if they never existed. And think about this, Every time you seek forgiveness, Allah loves you. The Prophet told us, the one who repents from sin is like the one who never sinned at all. Ibn Majah. Can you imagine? Not only does Allah forgive, but He restores you to a state of purity as if you had never committed that sin in the first place. And let me ask you, how many times have you fallen and thought, I can't do this anymore? I keep making the same mistake. What's the point? But the fact that you feel regret, the fact that you still want to change, is a sign that Allah has not abandoned you. He is pulling you back toward Him. Because the only time you truly fail is when you stop turning to Him. The only way you lose is if you let shaitan convince you that you are too far gone. But if you take even one step toward Allah, He will come rushing toward you with a mercy that has no limits. Every setback is a setup for something greater. My dear brothers and sisters, sometimes life doesn't go the way we planned. You work so hard for something, you pray for it, you do everything right, and then, just like that, it falls apart. The job you wanted, the relationship you were counting on, the dream you thought was finally within reach, suddenly slips away. And in that moment, it's hard not to ask, Ya Allah, why? But I want you to remember something powerful. Every setback you face is not the end of your story. It is part of a greater plan. Allah is not closing a door to break you. He is closing it to guide you towards something better. Look at the life of Prophet Musa. He grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, raised with power, status, and privilege. If you looked at his life back then, you would think he was set for greatness. But then, in an instant, everything changed. He made a mistake, had to flee Egypt, and became a fugitive in the desert, from a prince to a man with nothing. If we stopped his story there, it would look like the worst moment of his life. But what we don't see in the moment, Allah sees in full. That setback led him to Midian, where he found safety, a new family, and ultimately, his calling as a prophet. The very thing that seemed like his downfall was the thing that brought him closer to his true purpose. How many times have you looked back on your life and thought, Subhanallah, if that thing I wanted had worked out, I wouldn't be where I am today? How many times has what you thought was a disaster actually been a blessing in disguise? The Prophet himself faced this over and over again. In Taif, he was humiliated, insulted, and driven out of the city. The people threw stones at him until his feet were covered in blood. Can you imagine the pain, the heartbreak? Yet what did he do? He turned to Allah and said, If you are not displeased with me, then I do not mind. And what happened? That painful rejection set the stage for something greater, Medina. If the people of Taif had accepted him, there may never have been a migration to Medina, no city to welcome him with open arms, no foundation for the greatest transformation in history. The setback was not a punishment, it was a redirection. Allah knows what you do not know. He sees what is ahead when all you can see is what is lost. Sometimes the hardship you are facing is not blocking you, it is pushing you towards something greater. Sometimes what feels like a rejection is actually divine protection. And sometimes what seems like a delay is actually Allah preparing you for something far beyond what you even imagined. Because Allah promises, it may be that you dislike something while it is good for you, and it may be that you love something while it is bad for you, and Allah knows while you do not know. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:21-6. So when you face a setback, don't lose hope. When the path ahead seems unclear, trust the one who is guiding you. He is not done writing your story. What you see as an ending is just the beginning of something greater. Keep going, because the best is yet to come. Keep making dua. The doors of Allah are always open. My dear brothers and sisters, one of the most powerful gifts that Allah has given us is dua, the ability to call upon Him at any time, in any place, with any need. But how often do we underestimate it? How often do we feel like our du'as are not being answered, as if Allah is not listening? But I want to remind you today, every du'a you make is heard, every tear you shed is seen, and every hope you place in Allah is never wasted. The Prophet said, du'a is worship. Think about that for a moment. Your du'a is not just a request, it is an act of faith, a declaration that you believe Allah is the one who holds the keys to everything in your life. And when you raise your hands and say, Ya Rab, He never turns you away empty-handed. But sometimes shaitan plays with our hearts. He whispers, you've been making dua for so long and nothing has changed. Maybe Allah isn't answering you. And that doubt starts creeping in. But I want you to remember something. The delay in your dua being answered is not a rejection, it is a preparation. Look at Prophet Zachariah for years and years. Imagine how many nights he must have cried, how many times he must have felt his hope slipping away, but he never stopped making dua. And when Allah finally answered, He didn't just give him any child, He gave him Yahya, a prophet, a righteous son, a gift greater than he could have imagined. Allah's timing is not our timing. We rush, we want immediate results. But Allah knows when the moment is perfect. He is not denying you. He is either saving something better for you, protecting you from harm, or granting you something far greater than what you asked for. And sometimes we think, I've made so many mistakes, why would Allah answer my dua? But look at Iblis. When he asked Allah for something, did Allah refuse him? Allah waha obluha. Even the worst of creation had his dua granted when he asked for time until the day of judgment. So do you really think Allah will reject you, His servant, when you ask Him for something pure, something good? And let me remind you, Allah answers dua in 3 ways. He gives you exactly what you asked for. He gives you something even better than what you asked for. He removes a hardship from your life that you didn't even know was coming. So my dear brothers and sisters, keep making dua. Keep calling upon Him, even when it feels like nothing is changing, even when you feel like you're not worthy, even when the world tells you it's impossible. Because when you make dua, you are not speaking into the air, you are speaking to Al-Mujib, the one who always responds, and the doors of His mercy are always, always open. Jannah is worth the struggle. My dear brothers and sisters, I want you to imagine for a moment. Imagine standing at the gates of Jannah. Imagine the angels welcoming you in. Imagine stepping inside and seeing sights beyond anything you could have dreamed of. Imagine hearing the voice of Allah Himself saying, Peace be upon you, you have done well, so enter here forever. But here's the question, how do you get there? How do you reach that moment? Because Jannah is not something cheap. Jannah is a prize that requires effort, sacrifice, patience, and perseverance. And sometimes that struggle feels overwhelming. Sometimes life throws trials at you that make you wonder if you can keep going. But I want you to hold on to this one truth. Every hardship you endure for the sake of Allah is one step closer to Jannah. The Prophet told us, the path to Jannah is surrounded by hardships, and the path to hellfire is surrounded by ease. Muslim. Think about that. The road to Jannah is not meant to be easy. It is filled with tests that will challenge your faith, moments that will shake your heart, and struggles that will make you question whether you can keep moving forward. But I promise you, every tear, every moment of patience, every hardship you bear, Allah is recording it all. Not a single second of your pain is wasted. Look at the people Allah loved the most, the prophets. Did any of them have an easy life? No, they were tested more than anyone else. Prophet Ayub lost everything, his wealth, his health, his family, but he remained patient, and Allah rewarded him with more than he ever had before. Prophet Yusuf was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned, but every hardship was a step toward honor and power. And the Prophet Muhammad himself, he lost his parents, his children, his loved ones. He was mocked, attacked, and driven out of his home. But through every trial, he held on, because he knew what was waiting for him on the other side. So my dear brothers and sisters, I ask you, what is the struggle that is making you want to give up? Is it the pain of loss, the weight of your sins, the exhaustion of this dunya? Whatever it is, remind yourself, Jannah is worth it. Allah tells us in the Quran, indeed with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Shahar 94, not after hardship, with hardship. That means even in your pain, there is ease. Even in your struggle, there is mercy. And the greatest ease, the greatest mercy is knowing that Jannah is waiting for those who remain steadfast. Imagine walking into a palace that belongs to you, where the bricks are made of gold and silver, where the rivers flow beneath your feet, where every pain, every disappointment, every hardship you faced in this world is nothing but a distant memory. Imagine being reunited with your loved ones who also held on. Imagine never feeling sadness again, never feeling pain, never feeling tired, just eternal peace, eternal joy, eternal nearness to Allah. So yes, this life will test you. Yes, there will be days when you feel like you have nothing left to give. But in those moments, remind yourself, every sacrifice, every hardship, every struggle is taking you one step closer to a place where you will never struggle again. and that place is Jannah.